Today we're going to talk about unit rates, or in some cases we'll just call it rates, so a rate in general. And really on a daily basis we use rates all the time. Okay, if we're traveling in a car and you look at the speedometer and it says 30 mph. Okay, if you've never really thought about what that stands for, or what that actually means, okay, you might know that it stands for miles per hour. Okay, but have you really thought about what that means, especially in a mathematical sense? Okay, so what that is really saying is that we're traveling 30 miles, okay, each hour. So really, we write it as miles per hour, okay, or mph for short. But that's really how many miles, okay, how many miles we are traveling in 1 hour. And that's what a rate is, okay? We're trying to get it down to what we're doing per one of something, okay? Another example of that we use just about every day would be like how much we get paid on our job. So if we get paid $10, I'm just going to write it out so we can think about those units. Okay, if we get $10 per hour, okay, what does that really mean? Okay, that means we're getting, right, $10. So this is our units here, getting $10 each hour, okay, or per 1 hour. Okay, so if we work 2 hours, we're making $20 because we get paid $10 each hour, right? If we work 3 hours, we get $30. 4 hours, $40. Okay, same thing whenever we're driving in a car. Okay, if we're traveling at 30 miles per hour for several hours, okay, after 2 hours, we've gone 60 miles, right? Okay, after 2 hours, we've gone 60 miles. After 3 hours, okay, we've gone 90 miles. Okay, because we're traveling. That is our rate. Our unit rate is 30 miles per hour. Okay. And really, rate is, we've done ratios, and they're actually kind of related here. So if we have ratios, actually, let me draw that in a different color. Okay. If we have a ratio, let's think about a rate in terms of a ratio. So if we have 30 miles per hour, okay, so what is that as a ratio? So we would be traveling, let's just think of it as, what is the ratio of miles to hours? Okay, so we can think of this same thing in terms of a ratio. And so if we were going to write that, if we looked at our 30 miles per 1 hour, right, we could write it as 30, okay, to 1 ratio. So 30 miles per 1 hour, right? Okay, we could also write it as 30 over 1, okay, and like as a fraction. And then we start getting into how we normally write it. So if we were writing this in like a science class or something like that, we'd say we're traveling 30 miles per 1 hour. And we could write it like that, right? Okay, or we might write it as 30. You might see it like this, miles per, that's kind of what the slash means, that per hour. Right, and we could keep writing that. We could keep writing different units of it. If we did 60, traveled 60 miles in 2 hours, that would be the same rate, right? So it would simplify down to 30 in 1, right? So in class, you guys are going to be finding unit rates, okay? So let's look at a couple examples. First example here, if we have 25 minutes, we're trying to find the unit rate of 25 minutes for 5 songs, okay? What is that in minutes per song? Okay, so how many minutes does each song last? Okay, so to find that, we're going to take our bigger number usually, okay, and 25, and we're going to divide it by the number of songs, which in this case is 5. Okay, and then so how many times does 5 go into 25? Okay, it would go in there 5 times, because 5 times 5 is 25. So it'd actually be, if we wrote that in there, our unit rate for this one. So we have 25 minutes for 5 songs. So what is it per song? Okay, so each song is 5 minutes. So it lasts 5 minutes per song. Okay, let's do another one. Should be fairly easy. Okay, as long as you guys can divide, you guys should be fine with finding unit rates. Okay, you just got to know which numbers to use. And so we have this one here is 12 laps in 2 days. Okay, so how many laps is that per day? Okay, so this is a fairly easy one. So if we have 12 laps, divide that by our 2 days. Okay, how many times can 2 go into 12 here? It's going to go in there 6. Okay, so 6 laps. So in 1 day, we can do 6 laps per day, or 6 laps in 1 day. If we wrote that in there, that would be the same thing, right? So we can do 12 laps in 2 days, which is the same thing. Our rate is 6 laps per day. Okay, so if we find our unit rate, like we have our unit rate right here, right? 6 laps in 1 day. So I could also ask you questions like, how many laps can they do in 5 days? Okay, so if we have our unit rate, we know we can do 6 laps in 1 day. So all we got to do to find 5 days is take our 6 times our 5, okay, and we would get 30 laps. Okay, I don't have enough room there, but per 5 days, right? So we can, once we have our unit rate, it helps us find other rates as well. Okay, let's look at the last one here. Okay, a word problem. Makes it a little bit more challenging, but we just gotta kind of break down that problem and figure it out, right? So this one says the 6th grade talent show is next week. Each year, every performance is allotted the same amount of time. Okay, so we know that every performance only gets a set amount of time. Last year, there were 10 performances. The show lasted 60 minutes. Okay, so if the whole show lasted 60 minutes, and that would be divided up by 10 performances, right? So we would know we would have to do 60. So if we want to find the unit rate here, we do 60, because that's the total number of minutes divided by the number of performances, which is 10, right? And we know that that one is going to go in there 6 times. Okay, so our rate is actually 6 minutes per performance. So basically, each performance lasts 6 minutes, right? So this year there are 15 performances. Okay, last year there was 10. Now there's 15. We know that each performance only gets 6 minutes. So the question is, how long will this year's talent show last? Okay, so now we got to do 15 times, we just got to do 15 times 6. Okay, if I have enough room here. Okay, and we're going to get 30 and then 9, so 90 minutes. Okay, so how many minutes is it going to last? It's going to last 90 minutes. And if we look at that, that kind of makes sense, right? So 10 performances took 60 minutes, and now we're upping it by 5, so we know it's got to be greater than 60 minutes. Okay, so we add another 30 minutes to the show. Okay, so that is unit rates. Not too difficult, and like I said, we deal with those all the time. We study rates a lot in math, and even physical science, okay, a little bit. In algebra, you'll study the rate of change in a line, and we call that slope. So you'll be studying that as well. So it's pretty important to math, but also in everyday life.